Yes.
All right.
All right. So, being at home, excited to talk about this. Okay. So, basically, I don't know what I've noticed, at least in our office. I don't know how it is across the division, but like even our top guys like Brennan and Sam, they kind of struggle whenever they're talking to customers. Even though they know exactly what to say to them, they kind of get caught up, worried about saying the right or wrong thing. I'd say the biggest first tip that I can give you whenever it comes to like handling an incoming PDI call whenever a rep is with a customer is, honestly, you really should stop caring about whether you're doing it right or wrong. Like, it's just going to trip you up. You need to, like, the less worry you have, like, you got to realize you've done this already. You've been on the job for at least a year, for months, whatever. You've done plenty of demos. You sold plenty of Cutco. It's no different than when you're interacting with a customer in person than you are on the phone. The biggest thing you have to remember is you need to make sure you're upbeat, you're excited, you're positive, everything's okay. Like the way we always intro the call, hey, how's it going? How's Blake doing on his demo? How's everything going? Just try to, like, I take literally 10 to 15 seconds trying to build rapport with the customer, just to kind of, and I make it all about Blake or whoever's calling in. I make it about them. Like, how's their demo going? We're so excited that you took time out of your day to meet with them. They're still new on the job. We're very excited that we get to help them and that you're taking the time to help them as well. How did you like Cutco? Is this your first time seeing it? They're like, oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, no. Whatever the answer is, it kind of tells you where to go from there. And it's like, okay, very cool. So I guess he just showed you that homemaker set. How did you like that? And they're like, oh my gosh, I loved it. It's a lot of money. I don't know if that's going to be something we want to get today. But literally, like I noticed with Sam Assad earlier, they gave that little objection of, it's a little bit much, that was a little bit more than we were expecting to pay. And he kind of started struggling like on what to say. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like whenever a customer says that, it's straight from the manual. It's just like, oh my gosh, hey, no, I completely understand. $13.29 is a lot all at once. I don't know if they mentioned this before or not, but it's literally something that we do for all of our customers. Most people just, when they end up getting it, they just end up putting on our easy pay option. So literally all we do is we add tax, divide it by 5. You get everything right away. It actually only comes out to where it's $2.89 today instead of that $13.29. Is that something that might be a little bit better for y'all? Is that something you could see yourself doing? And it's literally just like whatever that question is that the customer gives, it's just handling that objection like you would if you were doing the demo live. I don't know how many times you've been with a customer and they've told you no, or it's too much money, or I need to think about it, or whatever the reason may be. You handle the objection the right way. The customer feels good about the way you handle it, and they're like, okay, yeah, no, that makes total sense for me. I can go ahead and get that. Or just being real and upfront with the customer, like, hey, no, I totally get it. I tell you what, we do have some really great specials going on, especially since Blake's a new rep right now. If we could give you some kind of crazy cool deal, is this something you could actually see yourself getting today? And a lot of times, like, just asking the customers that, like, I would ask them that in person. I would ask them that over the phone. It doesn't matter like how the demos actually happen. Those are questions I'm going to ask either way. And the customers are going to tell you like, yeah, this is feasible, or no, it's not. Like, and it's just kind of, the point you're doing for answering that call for the customer is you're figuring out that problem for what's really going on and why they're saying no. And you're trying to fix that problem to help them get exactly what they want. If they tell me like, yeah, you know what, it is, I really do like this one, but honestly, I don't know, there's a couple of knives in the set I may not use, or hey, you know what, that's just more than I can budget right now. And it's like, hey, no problem. I totally get that. Again, first time seeing Cutco, not a planned purchase at all. I tell you what, is it okay if we kind of go through one of our smaller options? Or it's like, hey, is it just a little bit out of the budget? Okay, that's awesome. That's fine. I tell you what, we have a really cool special with the homemaker where we can actually give you this really cool discounted price. We can't give you any free stuff, but we could cut that cost down pretty drastically. Would you care to see what that is and see what kind of discount we could give you? And again, that customer right then and there, they're going to tell you like, oh, well, yeah, let me know what that is. What would that be? And it's like, okay, awesome. We can do this trade-in special. Basically what we do is we get that basic we get that homemaker plus 8 price. We knock it down to where it's only $10.49. You're literally getting like almost like right around 20% off of the set, but you're still getting everything we agreed upon. It's just, we can't give you any extra free stuff with that because we knocked that price down so much. The customers, a lot of the time, like that big drop all of a sudden, they're just like, oh, that would be awesome. Like, and again, we're excited about it. We make it a kind of a big deal for them. But I know there's a lot of times people get questions on the call and they're always like, especially with newer managers, and they're just like, oh, I just didn't know what to say. So like one of the reasons I wanted like all of the other branches and everyone else to be honest, because like I want to hear some of those questions you have so maybe we can answer them. That way we can kind of better prep you for how to handle it in the future. So like, did any of y'all have anything that you were just like, you just didn't know what to do whenever the customer said that?
Hey, Calvin, I have something for you. You brought up the
Yeah.
trade-in special. Do you have like just certain go-to things? Like some people go, if you're dropping way, way down as a rep, it's like buy 3, get 1 free. In your head, are there like deal 1, deal 2, deal 3?
Absolutely. I mean, initially, like it's always kind of like the first question I like to always ask is like, what would get the customer more excited? Would they rather have a bunch of free stuff, or would they rather pay less for the set they're looking at? Because that kind of gives me the direction that I should go initially. If they do want less, obviously, then we'll go for the trade-in special. It's just it's a good significant drop. The customer feels good about it. They get excited. If they're like, oh well, what kind of free stuff can I get? It's like, awesome. We can do the entertainer pack. We could actually do the super shears. We could do some of the garden pieces. If there's like, oh, like there's a few extra knives they liked, but they don't come in the set, like because they saw like the larger set options. It's like, hey, yeah, we could actually get that cheese knife in there for you, or we could get that Santoku knife. So it's like the biggest thing, I guess, like it's really just figuring out like, hey, what's going to work best for the customer. So the reps, they're new and they don't know these questions to ask. They know to read the manual and they know to call their manager. They know to ask for help when they have a question. So it's your job to figure out what's really going on for the customer. So like it's instantly, it's like, hey, is this a money issue? Is it too many knives? Is it just like what's holding you back from actually wanting to pull the trigger that's keeping you from saying yes right now? But you can't just ask them that so directly. So it's like, hey, no, I totally get it. Like, now, do you think this is the right set for you? Do you think like, could you see yourself using all the pieces in this set? Or is this just a little bit out of the budget for you right now? So that's kind of holding you back from kind of pulling the trigger on it. And then like one of those 3 answers is normally the reason why they're not buying Cutco. It's honestly, it's too many pieces, or they just don't see themselves paying that much for knives. That's literally what it always ends up coming down to. So it's figuring out like which one it really is. Cause then we can tell them, okay, hey, I tell you what, we actually have this really great starter set. Like I get it's too many pieces. We actually take out a few of those pieces most people never use anyway. And it's making them feel good about not buying like the set they're looking at, and then making them feel really great about buying the set that's a step down because it's just right for them. Or it's just like, okay, hey, yeah, there's a few knives in there I wouldn't use. Okay, awesome. So what are those pieces that you just honestly wouldn't use? And then they're going to tell us like, oh, I probably would never use that butcher knife, or I would probably never use that bread knife, like whatever it may be. And it's like, okay, awesome. Here's what we could do then. We could go ahead and we could actually put together a personalized set for you, get you just the necessity pieces you're going to use. We'll get you a block that'll hold everything. We'll get you the steak knives with it. And then it comes out to this price. Awesome. But we're going to go ahead and still give you the discounted price that Cutco has it for, even though that you kind of swapped a couple of things here and there. And then it's just letting the rep know, hey, we're going to have to really make this work for them. So breaking it down like, hey, piece by piece, this is what it's going to be. So sometimes, like, I don't know, every time I take a call, I love having a notebook or a whiteboard right next to me so I can write everything down that's going on. So that way I can keep track of it, because I'll forget. But we overcomplicate it because we're just like, oh, we need to get them to this point. We need to get them to this point. Or it's just like, hey, no. Like, it's super simple. Do you like what you're looking at? Is this something you could see yourself buying? Awesome. So what can I do on my end to make it something that we could actually make happen today? Like, do I need to save you some money? Do I need to give you extra free stuff? Like, what would make you happier as a customer? And then again, the customer, they're feeling good about it because like we're asking them the questions they want to hear. So they feel like when you called your manager, man, like every time I get off a call with a customer, they're just like, hey, thank you so much. I can't believe we're getting exactly what we want. They're very excited about it. They feel good about the interaction and everything else that we just did. So it's not just like a lot of, yeah, I get it comes with experience, but like, again, this is something I've seen Brian do since I was a brand new rep. This is how I handle every single call. It's literally, we just talk with the customer. We feel where they're at. Again, that as managers, we're the ones that know how to do that. The reps, they don't know how to handle those types of things. They're brand new. They're like, oh, they buy the homemaker. They said no. I read this one objection handler. Okay, now I go show them a galley set.
Right.
It's like, so we're trying to fix that so that way. And again, the reps, they'll start to hear us handling this thing. And then they'll start to kind of catch on like, oh, okay, I can ask a couple of more questions and I'm not being a pushy person. Like, it's okay for me to see what's really going on.
So Calvin, I know we went to the branches to ask some questions, but for me, do you think our guys are very good at going over payment options? Is that something that you do also when you're talking to the customer?
I think it's how you explain payment options, because most people, like these days, when they think payment options, they're like, oh, am I signing up for a credit card with Cutco?
Oh, God.
Or, oh, am I financing
wow.
this? Yeah, like that's the kind of questions I get back from customers all the time. And I'm like, hey, no. Hey, just the cool thing about our easy pay option is very simple. We literally, whatever you decide you're going to get, we add it up. We total up. We add tax. We divide it by 5. So you're putting 20% down. You're getting everything right away, and they just auto bill your card for 4 more payments after that. So it's 5 payments total. There's no interest. There's no finance. There's no credit. It's just a once a month charge. It's like reverse layaway.
Okay.
And then the customer's like, oh, that makes total sense. Because like the weird questions they ask whenever we bring up the 5 pay, because then it's just like, I don't know. I always use the same line, because I'm always tell people like, hey, we don't offer you the 5 pay because we think it's a money issue for you. But honestly, because there's no interest or penalties for doing it, it's your money. You might as well keep it as long as you can. And they're like, oh, that makes total sense. I should definitely just do that easy pay.
That's a great line. That's a great line, by the way. I like that.
So one thing I just wanted to throw out, and Calvin, you can sort of run with this, but I think that a lot of times what holds some of our managers back from really engaging the way they should, I don't think it's always so much a knowledge gap, but it's just a confidence gap. And I think I think half of the magic with why Calvin, even when he was a newer assistant, was so good at this, even when he didn't have the great lines or always know what to say, he had such a high level of willingness to do it. And I think that sometimes, a lot of our newer managers think like, gosh, if I don't know how to wrap the sale up, I don't know how to answer every objection perfectly, it sort of makes them nervous to even try to even kind of go on that level with customers. And my advice I always give everyone who's in management is, number one, there's a reason you're where you are. Like, even if you don't feel like you're, God's gift to knife sales, I wasn't when I was an assistant manager, but I had been around it enough. I'd been immersed in it enough. I'd been a part of it enough. I'd seen it enough that I knew more than I thought I did. But what was important was you just sometimes got to fake it till you make it. It's like being willing to do it as much as anything. It's kind of that difference between what makes someone great out of training versus not. Chris B is not that his demo is a million times better than someone else from that training class. It's good, but he's just doing it more enthusiastically and more confidently. And so I think just Calvin's overall willingness to do it and not be afraid, because here's the deal. What happens if you don't do it right? Okay, great. Then they don't sell, which they weren't going to sell anyway, or at least not on the level if they didn't call you. So Calvin, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, about just sort of kind of, arming yourself with confidence or not worrying so much about knowing the right thing to say and just being willing to say something, I guess.
No, I agree. I mean, that was kind of like the big first thing for sure, but I'd say one of the reasons I kind of excel so much is because I don't care like how it's going to end up. Like, I don't let that affect like how I'm going to handle the call. Like, I know I'm going to answer the call. I know I'm knowledgeable. I've sold a lot of Cutco. I've been through all of these interactions before with customers on a personal basis. So it's hard for me to come across something that I haven't already run into. But even if you haven't sold as much Cutco as me, that's irrelevant. Like, I felt that way since I was a new manager. Like, once I'd sold 10 or 15 grand, it was like, oh yeah, people buy Cutco. There's a reason they buy Cutco, because it's awesome. I really it doesn't matter whether you say the right or wrong thing. If you're excited about saying what you're saying and you're making the customer feel good about what they're doing, that's really the biggest focus. It's not so much exactly using the right words every single time, because I still trip up. I mess up the words I'm saying half the time because I talk too fast a lot of times. I know I'm not perfect by any means when it comes to it, but I also I make the customer feel good. I make them feel good because I make sure like all the focus goes on like, hey, we're doing this for the rep. This isn't credit towards me. So like, I make sure the customer knows like, we're just helping the representative that they're wanting to help out. That's why it's all working out the way it's working out. Like, again, good words do help a lot, but like, again, that's not going to be like that all of a sudden make or break thing. Is because I said this very perfectly. That's why they bought it. They felt good about my interaction with them. They felt good that I was helping the representative and I was helping them. And I was just trying to find a scenario where everybody won. Because like, when they ask for those crazy, crazy deals, we just can't make happen. It's like, hey, yeah, like, I wish I could give you that homemaker for $900, but there's just no way that's going to work. Like, that would actually hurt, Blake for him selling it to you for that much, because he would actually end up paying you to take the Cutco from him. and Cutco just wouldn't even allow that order to happen anyway. So what I can do though is I can do this or this, and let's see if we can find somewhere that way you can win and Blake can win also. So I very much take myself out of the equation for him. Like, I'm just the middleman here to help them. And we're not doing it in a weird way. We're doing it in a direct way with them. We're not trying to like go to some back room and talk to our car salesman manager to get the weird quote for the car that they're trying to buy. Like, we're doing everything transparently. Like, that's why we always, like, if they were doing a live demo, we would be on speakerphone. On the virtual ones, we're just having them merge the calls. Like, we want that customer to be involved every step of the way. And again, like, it's just making them feel good. I think Brennan probably has that big problem where he worries about exactly what he's saying so much he starts to trip up over his words. And he's like, oh man, I messed it up. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. That part is irrelevant. It's honestly like, again, you just need to make the customer feel good. You need to make the rep feel good. And then everything else will kind of work itself out as long as you know the basics of where you're trying to get with it.
Calvin, is there something that you do that encourages people to call in? I mean, obviously we have people that check in before their demo, and we have some people that call in, and then some people just don't, right? Is there anything that you're doing that helps people have the confidence to call in?
I guess the way we kind of set it up for the rep, because like a lot of times they kind of think they honestly, the reps will say it the wrong way to the customer. And the customer, they're like, oh, my customer told me not to call in. And I'm like, oh, what'd you tell him? They're like, oh, I told him I have to call my manager to ask him for help. Or I need him to give me this deal for the customer. And they're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You've got it. Or something like that. And it's like, no. You tell your customers, hey, this is a mandatory thing that we expect from you. But you tell your customers, whenever you get to that page 8, or when you get to page 9, you ask them about a homemaker. It's like, okay, awesome. I have to check in for my appointments to make sure I get credit. And the customer never argues that point. Because they're like, oh, well, I want you to get credit for being here. Obviously, I didn't plan on buying anything. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. So it's never a weird thing. It's just always making sure, like, that's like, hey, write this in your manual. Write this down on a piece of paper. Like, wherever you need to put it, I have to call and check in so I can get credit for my appointment. It's very simple. Customers don't fight that for the representatives. And I think that's why our guys call in so often. And then after a rep calls in 2 or 3 times and you help them close a deal, whether it's 2 knives or it's a homemaker, it doesn't matter. But if you've helped them close a deal, they remember that and they want to call more because they're like, oh, well, I got that sale last time because I called in. I bet if I call in this time, I'll get another sale. So like our guys like Landon's a good example. Like he calls in like he's selling a lot, obviously. But I mean, we spent 20 minutes on the phone with this customer to help him close an ultimate upgrade that he didn't even know was a thing.
Right.
And he was just like, oh, he literally just mutes himself. And when I'm like, all right, Landon, do you have all this written down? Like it takes him 2 or 3 seconds to unmute himself to get back on the call because he's just like, oh, like I didn't have anything to add to this. But he gets it. Like when he calls in, he sells a set or he sells an upgrade or he sells something. And then the times where he didn't call in, he was like, oh, I didn't sell anything, so I messed up there. That was my fault. Like that's the way he takes it for his presentation. He's like, oh, I called in 8 times and I sold something. I didn't call in 2 times and I didn't sell anything.
Right.
So again, it doesn't matter exactly what they sell. They feel good that their manager helped them out. So, I mean, if you can help this rep close 2 knives with a free ice cream scoop, they're like, man, they feel good about the sale. It's always making them feel good about it. And it's also like framing it to the rep, like, hey, when you call in and we help you close the deal, you got to remember just because we helped you close it, you still get 100% of the credit. We're not taking anything from it. It's our job to help you be successful. And this is the best way we can help you. Plus, this is a part of training as well. Like you're gonna see us interact with customers in real time in real situations, and you're gonna be able to take notes on that and listen to us and see how we handle those objections. That way, when they come up in the future, you're gonna be able to handle those again.
I don't want to dominate everything. Is there anybody else has any questions for Calvin?
Yeah, I have a question, Calvin. So, like when my reps call in, and I usually have all my reps call in on page number 9. Like that's what I tell them in training is, hey, call me on page number 9 because that's where we're going to be able to help you out the most. And so when I have them do that and they finish reading page number 9, they answer a couple of objections. I talk to them. I talk to the customer. I'm a little bit confused as to if the customer is not interested. Should I just kind of continue dropping down for the rep, or should I let the rep do that drop down?
That one, oh, hold on, I'm getting a call. Brendan, answer it. So basically, whenever like a rep's calling in, like honestly, I tell them before they try to handle the objections, that's when they should call. Like, hey, whether the customer says yes or no to the homemaker, that's immediately when you should call me.
Right.
So like that way, I want to know the situation, because like a lot of times it depends on the customer. Like if I'm talking with the customer and they're just really not vibing with me at all, like I don't want to be the one to do the drop down for the rep, because I think they want to make sure the rep gets the credit for it. So I'm like, okay, awesome. You go ahead, show them the next sets, show them the galley set and the starter sets, see whichever one they like better, and then give me a call back and let me know if they like one or if they didn't. So that way, like I can still be involved with what's going to happen next, but like the rep can still get the customer, I could tell wants the rep to be the one to do it.
Right.
If me and the customer are just clicking super well, and I can tell like, okay, I could get this where it needs to be,
Right.
I'll just handle it for them.
Okay, cool.
A lot of times it's just like I listen to the tone of the customer whenever I'm talking with them, kind of the way they're reacting to me, to kind of see like, okay, they just want the best deal and they want Cutco. They don't care who helps them get it. Okay, awesome. Let's just get them closed right now before the rep messes it up. Because like if I can handle it, the rep sometimes they will mess it up, so I can handle it quicker, easier, better. Or it's like, no, they want to hear from that representative. So I'll stay on the phone sometimes if I need to while the rep goes through the drop down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just chime in when I need to.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think I'm gonna definitely start implementing that. I know it definitely is more of a got a feel for it thing, but I like that staying on the phone while drop down.
Yeah, because a lot of times if we just let them do the drop down, they'll just mess it up. Because I don't know if you've ever had a rep that call you and they're like, all right, we just looked at the homemaker. And it's like, okay, go ahead and do the drop down. And then literally 6 minutes later, when they couldn't have shown them everything else like they're supposed to, they're like, all right, my demo's over. And it's like, well, no, it's not. What did you just do?
Yeah. Calvin, can I ask real quick? I know you covered this, but just for the benefit of everyone hearing it one more time, when someone calls you, because a lot of times our reps, they're the worst people in the world at teeing us up. They just don't know how to do it. So what do you say? Because I think a lot of our guys feel weird. A rep calls and goes, hey, Calvin, this is Brian. I'm with a customer and just showed him the homemaker set, and you told me to call you.
So I will say right now, with them doing all the virtual ones, it's been a way easier response, because before they click back over, I'm like, okay, awesome. Tell me what's happening. Like, don't just throw me into and I don't know what's happening and I'm just going to have to figure it out myself. I'm just like, hey, awesome. Did they say yes to the homemaker? Did they like it? Like, did you show them anything else? Have you already dropped down? Like, tell me where we're at exactly. So that way, whenever I merge into the call, I can be best ready to handle whatever we're going into. So I love, honestly, that's the only positive I think about all of the virtual stuff, is that I can ask them that if they were right there in front of the customer, like if they're sitting down and I'm just on speakerphone. But right now I've just been like, hey, yeah, awesome. All right, give me the update. Where are we at? How do we feel? Did you handle any of the objections? Did you drop down already? Or is this exactly so that way I'm fully prepared to walk into whatever we're going into. I could figure it out if I had to, but now the fact that I don't, it just makes it a lot smoother of a call. So our reps they've really gotten used to when they call in for that first one, they're like, all right, here's what's happened so far. Here's where I'm at. And Brendan's really been pushing this with them a lot. So I got to give him some of the credit for them responding this way so much. But they have been just more of a, hey, here's the update. Here's where we're at. Here's exactly what I've done. Do you want me to merge it now?
I love it. Calvin, my last thing for you, you've been really good after advanced training, and you're spending 5 minutes longer with some of the top reps. And this isn't a call directly from a demo, but can you talk about some of the things that you're talking to people about, especially your best people? Because you're on the phone for a long time. You're really making a big impact. And some of them are a lot longer than 5 minutes. Some of these things I feel like are 20 minutes, but you're making a big impact on the right people.
Yeah. I guess when I was a new manager learning how to do PDI, I don't remember what the handout was or who wrote it or whatever, but it was a good PDI call has to last at least 5 minutes. That was just always the goal. So it was trying to figure out okay, how can I make this call last 5 minutes? And then the other big thing that I learned, whenever working with new reps, is the majority of everything we talk about is always going to be what's in it for them, not what's in it for us. Mm-hmm. So especially now, because we don't have that, we're not building that relationship and training, having them come in to kind of do all these things since everything's over the phone. It's just really trying to make them feel appreciated in a different way. Whether it's a phone call, it's a couple of text messages, anything. But when I talk to them initially, it's just after advanced training and they've had their first weekend, It's always kind of like, hey man, how are you feeling about the weekend? Like, how do you feel everything went? And this is whether it's a top rep that's performing the way they should or they're performing the way they shouldn't. Like, it kind of always, it's going to start the same way. It's like, how are you feeling? How do you feel about the whole process? Like, how do you feel about the demos now that you've got a good handful under your belt? Like, are you feeling good about the transitions, about the slides, the way you're handling everything? Like, tell me where you're at with everything. And they're like, oh no, I feel good. I feel like I really got the hang of it. It's going so well. I wish I would have got more sales, or yeah, I've been getting some really good sales. I want to keep getting more. And I'm like, okay, awesome. So like, I noticed you knocked out, 10 appointments over the weekend. Like, what do you think? What's helping you challenge yourself, or what's holding you accountable to where you're hitting those types of numbers? Like, what's the reason that you're going to be working as hard as you're going to be working to hit whatever you want to hit? And like, just kind of trying to figure out initially what's starting to motivate them. And then it's like, awesome. So what's the goal that you're actually shooting for after they give me the answer? And they're like, okay, well, I would love to get on that limo. That's what they always say. I love to get on the limo. That's like the big one. And it's like, okay, awesome. Like, now, do you want to know what it actually takes to get on the limo? Do you know what you should probably be doing to make that happen? And then it's like, okay, because again, I want them to be the reason that I'm telling them what I'm telling them. So they're giving me all of those things. They're telling me what's motivating them, what their goals are, why they work so hard. And then I can be like, awesome. So, well, if that's what your goal is, do you mind if I share a few things that could help you really make that goal obtainable? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, that would be great. I'm like, awesome. So how many phone times do you have scheduled throughout the week around your appointments? It's like, awesome. Like, how many appointments are you planning on doing every day to kind of make that happen? And do you know what the suggested number is daily to make that a reality? Because if you're doing just 1 or 2 a day, like, I think you'll probably do great just because you're better than most. But honestly, I don't know if that's going to be the number you need to hit that 10K mark. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, what should I be hitting? I was like, honestly, 3 a day is a champion's way, but 4 a day is way better. So like, I don't know, the last guy that hit it, he was doing 4 a day and he knocked it out no problem. And the guy that hit it before him, he did 4 a day and he hit it. And the girl that did it before him, she did 4 a day and she hit it. So there's kind of a trend there. Now, I'm not telling you have to do 4 a day, but I'm just going to give you factual numbers that make sense for you, kind of just like it just helps kind of put it in their head. Like, oh, okay, so if I just do 4 a day, I have a shot at hitting it. And like, I was like, I can't guarantee it's going to work for you that way, but you'll have a way better shot that way than you will doing it some other way. And then it's like, awesome. So then I always ask the personal question too, like, awesome. So where are you going to school? Where are you going to college? What's your game plan? Are your parents paying for college or are you paying for it? Like, I always ask them that question, never like it's a big deal. And they're like, oh yeah, my parents are paying for it. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what are you going to be doing for money during the semester? Like, and they're like, oh, well, I might get a little bit of money here and there. I'm like, okay, cool. Can I tell you some really cool stuff about a lot of our guys that work here over the summer and how they work here just for the summer? They make enough money to go through their first and second semesters without having to ask mom or dad for money. And then just come back and work next summer and do the exact same thing. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, like literally we have guys, Sam Assad, he worked here with us last summer. He sold, $40,000 worth of Cutco. He worked really hard. He was very consistent. He took it serious the full time. He ended up making like over 10 grand working with us. And that was enough money to get him by for the winter and spring semester. So that way he didn't have to worry about money. He didn't have to worry about getting an extra job or doing other things. So that way he could just focus on school and not have his time like, oh, I got to go work for this like $7 an hour bookstore job. So that way I can make some extra money for this and this. And they're like, oh man, like, but again, it's just figuring out what's going to tie them into working. Because a lot of times they need that extra motivation. They don't know. They think, oh, I just want to hit the limo night. And then they fizzle out because that's all they want to do. But it's like, oh man, we can get them to hit limo night, but now we need to paint a bigger picture that they can see like, okay, this is why it makes sense for me to continue to keep putting these numbers up. So it's always what's in it for them and how can I figure out what's going to motivate them. And then I'm going to use that. I'm going to ask them straight up like, hey, I know like there's going to be times when you want to work and there's going to be times when you don't. Like my job is to help hold you accountable and be your coach. So is it okay if I can be that person to hold you accountable? Can I call you out when you're not doing what you should? And then I can congratulate when you are doing what you should be doing. Can I be that guy? And they're always like, well, yeah, absolutely. It's like, okay, awesome. Like, I'm not going to ask you to overwork yourself and just to be worn out by the end of summer. Like, we're going to schedule time off. We're going to do all those kind of things. But like, if you tell me you're going to do something, like that's what I'm going to expect you to do. And I don't want you getting upset with me if you don't do it. And then I'm like, hey, why didn't you do what you told me you were going to do? Like, is that fair? And they're always like, oh, no, that's totally fair. Of course, absolutely. So then it's like, okay, awesome. I know what we're working towards long term. And that's what's going to help motivate them to kind of get to be that higher level rep that they want to be.
Well, forever people talk about the way you show people that you care is through TIME, right? Through time. And I feel like I've seen that so often. I know what an impact that you make, and you know how to get people to do that. It's great to hear some of those tips to be able to dive in. Anybody have any last question for Calvin before we go? So thank you very much, Calvin. We do appreciate that. I did send everybody a 6-minute video with a handout that they've been using at SEC. It's from the guy in LA, Kuvi, who's been using it, and he's the guy that did 50 grand in new business last week, or 3 weeks in a row, I guess. So it may be worth doing it. I know mornings on Thursdays are always just crazy in general. So make sure that you're off to a good start. Make sure you're getting ahead of the game so that you're not chasing your tail with all the crazy stuff that's going on. BC, do you have any last minute things for them, or are we good?
No, I just think I think one of the biggest things is just our willingness to do all the stuff Calvin talked about. So my advice is, in addition to all the normal communication guidelines we lay out in training this week, I think it's in everyone's best interest to make sure you get your hooks in your top, 1 or 2 or 3 favorite people, and just have that extra conversation that Calvin talks about, which is like, hey man, at the homemaker, if they say yes, great, call me. If they say no, great, call me. And I want to dig in a little more with you, because, you may not be able to talk to every person 3 times, like for every demo, if you've got a big big group. But the most important thing is by getting the right habits and having something to promote and creating those sales leaders, you can really get the rest of your team in line with that. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do it with everyone, but if from a practical standpoint, we're going to have a big training class today. At a minimum, in above and beyond the normal communication guidelines we give them, I would make sure that your best people know that you need to hear from them on the homemaker. Not even just, hey, call me if you have questions, but just like, hey, call me every day on the homemaker set. I'm going to put you on my back. We're going to do this together. So just create the right expectations at the beginning, and then that way it's really easy to hold them accountable and get it done. But that was awesome stuff, Calvin. That was amazing.
Yeah, really great stuff.